And hopefully this is recording. But this week we are covering chapters 13 and 14. Remember that we are going to be meeting on Zoom both days. So I have included, if you go to the Zoom tab on the side here, you'll see that we have today for Unit 5, and then on Wednesday, Unit 5, Day 2. So we'll be doing 2 Zoom meetings this week since I am out of town. And this is kind of a big week in terms of stuff that's due because you have your normal discussion and your homework assignment. But you also have your second journal article review here. So remember that your journal article reviews are counting for 15% of your grade, I believe, and you only have 2 of them. So this is the time to do that. For the journal article review, same exact things as last time. And if you look in the videos, I do have a video on how to do this. So let me find all of your videos here tab. And I have that right there. So the how to do that is written there. So make sure you use that when you are going over that. For your discussion here, you have to respond to one of these 2 prompts. So you don't have to do both of them. Just make sure you get at least one. And you're going to look at either choosing 2 concepts of kinesthetic development and explain each. Pretty simple there. We'll be talking about kind of tactile kinesthetic development a little bit today and more so into Wednesday. And then provide an example other than stair climbing or swinging a racket in which an environment scaled for adults does not afford an infant or child much smaller in size to do the same behaviors as adults. What this means is that if you take something, some sort of activity, and you make it so that an adult can do it, what is a type of that activity where you couldn't make it smaller or adaptable to a child? And they say very specifically the climbing or swinging a racket. So what this means is what kind of activities are you unable to change the size of for normal adult participants versus children? They have to be the same size, essentially. So there's your 2 choices for your discussion question. And then for your homework here, what they're asking us to do is to be able to do these in groups. And again, since you don't have enough, we don't have enough people here for this, or to do, I guess, in good enough groups, what I'm going to do is I'm going to assign everyone a single test to do, and then you'll have to present that on Wednesday. So don't worry about this part 1. You don't have to worry about that. What you're going to need to do is you're going to need to present your test and how to do it, how to score it, anything like that. And then you're going to have to answer questions 2 and 3. So the questions 2 and 3, you're going to actually turn in. So you don't have to have these ready for Wednesday. On Wednesday, you just have to be able to present your test, okay? And then questions 2 and 3, that's what you have to turn in to the assignment. How I'm going to grade this is I am going to say, I haven't exactly given the point breakdown, but I'm thinking I'm going to do either 15 or 19 points for your presentation, and then 3 or 5 points each for your 2 questions here. Either way, the majority of your homework grade for this week is going to be you presenting it on Wednesday. So right when class is over, I'm going to post an announcement with your test, and then you'll be able to do that. So again, the only thing you're going to have to do is you're going to need to explain and demonstrate the test. That's it. I don't believe there's no real big like things or tools you need to have to be able to do this correctly. So don't worry about like if you don't have the type of whatever stuff needed for the test. And if even need be, you can even use like say, you know, pictures or any kind of supplemental material online to help you with that as well. But these are designed to be tests that you can kind of do on your own kind of thing. So any questions on that? So again, Wednesday, you're presenting the test. For the homework to turn in, you are answering just questions 2 and 3. All right. So for today, we are doing chapter 13. And with chapter 13, this is sensory perceptual development. Any idea what this means?
No.
All right. I've been watching Monsters, Inc. a whole lot because that's what Mason likes right now. And the one lady who ends up working for the government has a line where she says, your stunned silence isn't too reassuring. So the more you guys can fill me in, then the better I can help you out. So when we're talking about this sensory perceptual development, anything sensory is referring to your senses, and perceptual means your perceptions or how you view something. So sensory perceptual development is how you take your senses and use those to perceive the world. When we get into, say, Wednesday with chapter 14, we'll talk a little bit more about how you combine both your motor skills along with your sensory perceptions to be able to form then actual usable tasks, things like that. So right now we're getting kind of into the background of that. Now, yeah, I know it says there's 54 slides here, which is an awful lot. A lot of these we're going to be kind of skimming through because I only want to hit really the major points that we need to know here. Now, we've talked before about the difference between perceptions and sensations or senses. Whenever you have a sensory response is something that you are going to have that's triggered from something outside. So when you have any sort of sense, think of, say, your sense of touch. Okay, I touch something, I touch, say, this mouse or whatever. When I touch this, my senses tell me then how the texture of this feels. Like I can feel that there's a rigid edge or kind of ribbed edge on the side here. I know that that's different than the smooth edge that's on the top of it. And what's happening is my body is giving me feedback to tell me what it is I'm experiencing. So I have to have a sensation. I have to have an external stimulus. A perception is typically an internal type of stimulus. Now, there is a definitely a multi-stage approach to it, but how you perceive something is your personal perception. So I may perceive this mouse as being, I don't know, bigger than something else or bigger than another mouse, even though objectively speaking, it's the same size. Because if I look at how it looks, you know, it's got like a fatter middle part to it. It's got these little pieces sticking out in the end. But if I were to actually measure that out, objectively speaking, that fits into the same basic parameters of any other, you know, desktop mouse kind of thing. Think about too, say, if you've ever looked at a fish in the water. If you ever see a fish in water and you're not in the water, how does that fish look to you?
Slimy.
Well, I mean, you probably can't tell its actual texture from being out of the water.
They look big.
Okay, they look big. And what about their actual location?
They look like they're close to the top, like almost out of the water.
Kind of, yeah. So there's a principle called refraction, where if I look at something in the water, where I see that fish is not actually where the fish is, because the way that the light is bent or refracted makes the fish look like it's right here, whereas it's actually, like, say, right here. That is your perception. Your perception is how you view the world or how you experience the world. It may not be correct, but you know, you've heard the saying perception is reality. If you were to, say, take a gun and shoot at a fish in the water and you shot exactly where you saw the fish, you would miss it 100% of the time because your perceptions are wrong. Your visual perception is telling you that the fish is right here, when in actuality it's not, because like I said, with that light refraction, it makes the fish look like it's here, but it's actually down there. So does that kind of make sense?
Yes.
Okay. And that's just kind of what I explained here. So if you're following along in the book, which I'm sure all of you are not. All right, so when we start getting into the actual development of our senses and our perceptions, the big thing we got to look at for development is visual development, or your eyesight. If you can't see, how good is your balance?
Not very good.
I mean, it's going to decline, right? If I just stand up and I stand on one leg, I could probably do that for quite some time, hopefully. If I stand on one leg and then I close my eyes, all of a sudden my balance is thrown way off. Why?
Is it because you can't see?
Well, it is, but what then happens?
You can't really control?
I mean, you can control your body. I mean, hopefully, like,
I mean,
you know.
I don't know, because we had to do that for a physical and it was pretty damn hard to do.
Yeah, it is. You're not wrong there.
But I don't know.
So one of the big things that happens when you close your eyes is you lose that visual spatial perception. You lose your ability to tell where you're at in space. Now, you may, like, if I just look around the room and I get a good idea of where the room is and I close my eyes, I know, like, for example, there's a TV over there, there's a picture behind me, there's a door over there, there's a door behind me. I know where all those are, but getting up to walk to them is going to be really tricky. Yeah, I know that I can walk to the side door here because it's a French door, so it's, two doors that open front, back kind of thing. So I know I'll hit the door, but how likely am I to go and be able to reach and grab the handle immediately?
It wouldn't be immediately. It would take a while.
Yeah, I mean, and maybe I get lucky, maybe I just, but more likely than not, I'm going to hit the door because I'd be able to find the door easily. It's real easy to find a door if I just reach for it, right? But getting the handle is going to take some doing, a little bit of adjusting, because I don't quite know exactly where that is. It's that same thing when you are trying to just balance on one leg. When you have your eyes open, you can see everything about you. Your body knows where you are in space. You close your eyes, now your body doesn't know exactly where it's at. You can still stand on one leg, but it's not going to be pretty, right? So that's really where it's at. It's kind of like if you were, say, it's kind of like if you were, like, say, sailing or like on a boat of some sort, like in the ocean. You're always on the ocean, but with the water making you go up and down, you're never quite in one space, right? And that is what commonly gives you, say, like seasickness, because your body is unable to justify why it is you're moving so much when it can't get any perception of where it is you're moving. That's why the saying is to, like, look out to the horizon if you're on the water, because that'll give your body an actual visual cue of where you're at, so you can see that you're actually moving. Because if you can't tell or don't have any sort of space to give your body feedback, that's when you get sick, because you are physically moving up and down with the water, but your body can't process that because it doesn't have a viewpoint to give you that cue saying, oh, okay, I get it, we are moving. What it thinks you're doing is it thinks you're standing straight because you're standing on flat ground. You're standing on, a boat, whatever. That boat itself, you're always on that boat unless you fall off, But when that boat moves, it moves along with the water. It's fluid. It's not like the boat's jumping up and down unless, it really is. But there's no feedback for your body. That's why you get sick. If you're able to get at least a view of, like, say, like I said, the horizon, that can somewhat give your body a perception of where you're at. And it tells your body, yes, I am indeed moving. This is normal. Don't make me start throwing up everywhere, kind of thing. Does that kind of make sense?
Yes.
Okay. When you're born, you're essentially born legally blind, kind of thing. And this happens to everybody, but children do not have the greatest of eyesight. This goes back to the whole closing your eyes and, say, trying to balance. Now, imagine you just had really, really poor eyesight. So, granted, I wear glasses and I have approximately I think it's a -1.25, whatever, refraction or something. So I think that means that I'm nearsighted. I'm not quite sure. But if I take my glasses off, I can still see everything, but it's a little bit more blurry. If I put my glasses on, then I can see everything. If I take my glasses off and I try to read, yes, nearsighted has to be, because I'm having trouble reading the Dr. Pepper sign away from me. So if I take my glasses off and I try to read far away, it's blurry to me. And when I am say, an infant, that blurriness is a lot bigger. So the number I believe they give you, yeah, here you go. You have 2400 vision. So 2400 means that what someone would normally perceive at 20 feet, you would perceive at 400. I'm sorry, what someone normally would perceive at 400 feet, you would perceive at 20 feet. So what that means is if I see something 400 feet away at 20/20 vision, you see that poorly at 20 feet, okay? So the second number is in your vision is the one that you want to go with. The lower your second number, the better your eyesight is. If you are, I think it's like hawks or eagles have something like the equivalent of 25 vision, something along those lines, where they essentially can see like they're looking through a pair of binoculars, whereas us humans have limited eyesight. So infants have poor eyesight, therefore they have poor visual spatial awareness. This is why, and it kind of surprised me because a few of you still missed this on the last exam, but this is why you develop your gross motor skills first before you develop fine motor skills. Because let's say in the door example here, if I am going to touch the door, that's like a gross motor skill. Big, large area. If I'm trying to grab the handle, it's like my fine motor skill. You're going to learn how to touch the door before you can trigger the handle. So with children, this is part of the reason why they have very little visual spatial perception, because they just can't see nearly as well. As your eyesight develops, then you get a lot better with it. This is also why this bit here, infants can differentiate facial features at 20 inches. So 20 inches, you got to figure, is approximately going to be from, really, it's kind of like really just your thigh length. So if you're sitting down, from your kneecap to your hip, that's about 20 inches. So it's not that far, but imagine that that is the distance you had to be able to tell somebody's face is different from another or closer. Most of you, if you have a normal size laptop, they're typically around about 14 or so inches, 14 to 16 inches. So really your laptop and about, the size of your hand minus your fingers is usually going to be close to 20 inches. But that's how close you have to be as an infant to be able to tell a difference between faces. Past 20 inches, when you get 2+ feet away from someone, you all look the same. It kind of be like if I looked at people from a distance, I could tell there's a bunch of people out there, but I can't tell who each individual person is because I can't see or distinguish their facial features, who they are. Obviously your vision improves, but until then, it's going to be very difficult for you to have a lot of perceptual skills because you lack the vision to be able to perceive things. We all know vision declines with aging. Pretty self-explanatory there. All right, for visual perception, we already talked about how this involves how we perceive the world as we view it. So remember the video I showed of Mason. The hell is the It's not iTunes, it's Google Drive. No, not Google Drive. What the heck's the storage thing for your iPhone or the cloud? iCloud, there we go. Sorry, I just got to find it real quick. Where the heck did I put that? Oh, there it is. Okay. So this one with Mason I've shown you before. And again, you notice how he has the gross motor skill there, where he is just grabbing a handful of Cheerios, shoving them in his mouth. Why do you think he's not able to pick up an individual Cheerio here?
Is it because he's never used that type of motor before because he doesn't know exactly how to do that yet?
That's part of it. And then think of the vision part.
He doesn't just see one, or like they just all look like one to him instead of multiple.
Yeah, he's not seeing that these are each individual Cheerios when they're in a bag together. Now, if you put one Cheerio out in a line, like breadcrumbs kind of thing, yes, you're going to distinguish those because they're just one by itself. You put a whole bag together, and it's very difficult for him, and he is 13 months here, so it's very difficult for him to distinguish that there's where one ends and another begins. That's part of the big reason why, and it's not just Mason, but it's all infants, will start out with their gross motor skills because they're not able to have that visual perceptual awareness. And then I showed you when we have this one here, how he is able to pick up one individual blueberry. And you notice how there's a bunch there. So that tells you not only are the fine motor skills developing, but what does it say about his vision?
That it's also getting better. So does it take your vision getting better to be able to develop your fine motor skills?
Yes and no. So this again happened 2 weeks ago. And when you're developing your fine motor skills, you need a mix of both vision development and you also need manipulation skills. So the manipulation part is where he's able to grab these blueberries without smashing them, because he used to do that. He would grab it and just smash it because he didn't know, his own strength. It's kind of like when you're talking about like a venomous insect, reptile, whatever. The ones you really worry about are the children or the newborn ones, because they don't know how to control their venom kind of thing. And same thing with like a small child. They don't know how to control their own strength. So the vision helps him to distinguish each of those individual blueberries from each other, that he can actually then go and grab one. And then he has to have that actual fine motor skill development, like the mechanical development side of it, so that he can then manipulate just one at a time. So it's both things together. If I were to have given him things that were of contrasting colors, he would be able to do this activity earlier in life, because the contrasting colors make it much easier for you to distinguish each individual thing. If you have everything the same color and relatively the same size, it's a lot more difficult to distinguish. So hopefully that answers your question there.
It does. Also, this is kind of off topic, but do babies see, like, do they actually see upside down? Because last semester I had a psychology teacher that told me that, like, for the first part of life, like, babies, like, see the world upside down. And then, like, I can't remember what it was called, but something happens and then it, like, flips. So I don't know. That's the first time I've ever heard that.
So they do have a propensity to have, I'll show you here, my absolute favorite picture of them. My wife hates it. Oh, here it is. So babies do have a propensity to like go cross-eyed and such. They don't see like upside down. Like it wouldn't be like, everyone's standing on the ceiling kind of thing. But they do have this propensity to go cross-eyed quite a bit. And they actually can develop somewhat of a monocular vision, or well, I guess to say more like a binocular vision, where they have their eyes going in opposite directions, so they can actually kind of see different things at once, or perceive different things at once. I've never heard of having like a straight upside down vision, like if I were to turn myself upside down and see it that way. But definitely like the cross-eyed thing, and not being able to focus with both eyes on one thing, I know as well. But I've never heard of the about seeing things like upside down.
Yeah, me either. That's why I thought it was kind of weird, but I wasn't going to question it. So
Why not? I will say one of my biggest regrets from really, like say both high school and college baseball, is not questioning why we did things more. I distinctly remember my senior year in high school, I questioned why we were doing something for pitchers, and my coach threw a chair at me. So I kind of just quit questioning things from there on out. And then my first senior year in college, I didn't question why my pitching coach had us doing long toss from our knees. And about 5 throws in, I tore my meniscus. So yeah, that's kind of one of my bigger regrets in life there, was not questioning more. So I would encourage you all to at least ask why you're doing something. All right. We've talked about the perception of space. One of the things that you have with your whole depth perception is that you need both eyes to have true depth perception. If you close one eye, you will maintain some level of depth perception for a little while. But if you were to go even like several minutes to maybe like, 10, 20 minutes with one eye closed, you would virtually lose all of your depth perception. Because without having both eyes, you're essentially seeing almost like 2D. So both eyes working together is essential to have proper depth perception. Now, some things that don't require, say, depth perception, or when you have a known distance to an object. Like if you know the distance to an object, for example, if you're like, say, shooting, I know if you ever read into like actual doing like shooting with like long distance rifles, that you're supposed to leave both eyes open, that kind of thing. But for all intents and purposes, when you're looking through, like, say, a scope, you look with one eye, and you know that your target is X distance away. So you don't need depth perception per se for something like that when you have a known distance. But even something, let's say, like you are, swinging a golf club, if I know that my ball's 100 yards to the green, I mean, that's a known distance. However, if I don't have proper depth perception, how likely am I to be able to hit the ball squarely when I actually hit it? Same thing with, like, say, baseball or softball hitters. If I'm swinging a bat and I, just straight up don't have depth perception, I'm most likely going to miss, or I'm going to be off with my timing for that. That's the whole premise of really why, a curveball or a changeup can be so difficult to hit versus, like, say, just a straight fastball. And it's all because your depth perception gets screwed up. You see that ball coming in and you have a perception of how fast it is. If the ball is not going at that speed that you are perceiving, what do you do when you swing?
I missed the question. Sorry, could you ask that again?
Yeah, so you're hitting in baseball or softball, and your perception of speed is that the ball is coming in at X speed, whatever that speed is. Now, if, say, the pitcher throws a changeup or a curveball, how does your perception change?
Like, you can see that the speed has changed, but you're already like, you're going to swing too early, most likely, more than likely.
Yeah, most likely. Now, granted, if you're a good hitter, you wait back on it and whatever. But for the most part, you judge really your entire at bat based on a fastball speed. And then you're supposed to adjust down or adjust slower to it. If I was, say, going up with the approach to hit a curveball, and I was perceiving that the curveball was what I am going to base my judgment on, or the speed judgment on, and I saw 3 straight fastballs, how do you think my swing is going to react to that? So in other words, I go up expecting curveball, and all I see are fastballs. What's going to happen?
It's going to go by you because you think it's going to break.
Yes. In short, I think it's going to come in a lot slower than what it is. So I'm going to most likely be behind the ball or be late on the ball. This all comes from these different types of seeing, for lack of a better word. When you are seeing something, anything in motion, you have a perception of what that motion is or that movement is relative to you. Okay? So, if I look again at, like, say, the ball coming in on me, I have a perception of how fast that's coming in. Think about even just playing catch with somebody. If you're throwing a ball to someone, you have, or if somebody's throwing a ball to you, you have a perception of how fast that is, right? And as you get better, at your sport, like, you can just tell, how fast something is. You don't have to actually think of it. But let's say that you're, playing catch with somebody, and all of a sudden someone snaps off a curveball to you without telling you. What do you think that does to your perception?
I mean, it just like throws you off. You're just not ready for it because you're so used to only seeing like the one thing repetitively. So, like,
Yeah,
even if it's like a bad throw, like you're either gonna be like off balance, you're not gonna be ready for it.
yeah,
So,
exactly. I had a when I signed with this school called Eckerd College in St. Petersburg, Florida, out of high school, and one of the kids on the pitching team or pitching staff with me was from like Tampa, the Tampa Bay area, and he was a somewhat sought after recruit. Like he was probably like a 2, 3 star kind of recruit guy. Threw really hard, had no clue where the thing was going, and just a complete head case. And everyone that plays baseball, if you're a pitcher in baseball and you come in day one as a freshman, obviously everyone asks you how hard you throw, and everyone says I throw 90 plus. And this kid comes in and he's like, man, I don't know. I mean, I throw kind of hard, I guess. Just straight up chucking it. Like, I mean, when he was on, it was on. But he got to the point where he couldn't throw even like the flip tosses we would do, like just the wrist flips to first start getting loose without throwing the ball, 10 feet in any given direction that's not to you. The perception that we all had, first off, no one wanted to play catch with him because of that. But whomever ended up having to play catch with him, it was, good luck. You pretty much got to be take on the persona of a catcher if you want to try to even play catch with this kid. The perception you have is that when that ball is thrown, you need to be able to track where it's going. When someone's playing catch with you, or you at least have the idea that that ball is going to come somewhere in this given area. When it consistently misses all over and you have no clue where it's going to be, then you can't have a perception on it because you have no data to support that. If I throw a ball to you, Claudia, and the first one goes right to your chest, right there, perfect, great. Well, then the next one I throw goes over your head. The next one hits you in the shins. The next one goes 10 feet to your left. The other one after that, 10 feet to your right. Then I throw another one, in the dirt. Now, where do you think that next ball is going?
No idea.
No clue. And what does that do for you? How does your perceptions change?
Constantly, just because I don't know exactly where it's going to go.
Yeah, you have no clue where it's going. So you can't make a rational decision on how to be able to perceive where I'm throwing because you don't know where it's going to go. I might throw it straight to you. I might throw it where, you're going to be running for days to chase it down, kind of thing. So you see how that perception can change just huge in terms of sports performance. So I know, Destiny, you play softball. Michaela, you play soccer. I'm sure you've seen a few of the David Beckham goals. Like the one that sticks out in my mind is the one that he scored um, uh, from midfield. So something like that, where and I forget how exactly long is a soccer field. Okay, so if I'm from the halfway mark, that's going to be roundabout like 50-ish yards. And how difficult is it even just to kick a soccer ball that far, let alone that far and score? Very, right? What position are you? Okay, you're a forward. I forget who's your keepers? Liz, that's it. Yeah, so someone, kicks the ball from midfield as a shot on goal. She should have a general idea of where that ball's going. But let's say in like the Beckham case where he kicks it and the ball bounces somewhat in front of her. Now she has a very, very small amount of time to be able to react to that. And with the particular goal I'm thinking of, the ball bounced over the goalie's head, but it was just that one, like, it was like that perfect sliver where the goalie like timed it, jumped as high as he could and couldn't like get that high. So like that angle of the bounce and the drop coming in was like absolutely perfect. So your perception of that is that that ball's coming in, it should not get past me. And when I have to adjust my perceptions, I have a very, very small amount of time to do it. Same thing with the whole fastball curveball example. When you are expecting fastball and you see curveball, you have a very, very small amount of time to adjust to it. I know I've talked about this before in different classes. I don't think I mentioned it here, but in baseball, if someone throws 97 or more miles per hour, you cannot hit the ball in fair territory unless you start your swing before the pitcher releases the ball. So how big of an advantage does somebody who throws 100+ miles an hour have?
A huge advantage.
Yeah. That's why it still baffles me whenever Aroldis Chapman gives up a hit, let alone like, really a home run's not that hard to get behind because he's providing most of the power you need. I mean, pretty much you make contact, the thing's going a while. But just for people to make contact, you pretty much have to just be a good guesser. That's kind of it. All right, we've talked about all of this, perceptions with objects. Okay, the perception of objects goes on back to the homework assignment from last week. Whenever you have an object that you are touching, you'll notice that children will grab an object and they will touch all the edges. They'll also usually put it in their mouth, kind of thing. But the term that's used to describe that is boundaries. You have any given object and you have boundaries to it. If I am holding this hat, I know that this at the edge is a boundary. Now, if you try to give something that's round to a child, you'll see them initially struggle with holding it because there's no edge to it. There's no end of this. This goes on forever, right? There's no stopping point. Whereas if I give a child a block, they have very concrete edges. You know exactly where that starts and stops. This is why when you want children to start with their whole gross motor skill development, it's best to use things that have edges, like that have usually square edges to them, because it's much easier for a child to tell that this is an edge and they can perceive that a lot better than if you give them a round object. So while typically kids like to play with balls are actually much more difficult to develop that visual perceptual acuity towards. So developing the not only the perception towards it, but the grasping ability on it is very difficult because there's no edge to it. Now, with practice, you obviously get better, but that initial development of gross motor skills is much easier accomplished, or much more easily accomplished, there we go, if you have concrete lines or edges to it. Okay, this here, this is what is called whole and part perception. This drawing would essentially be, you'd get 2 orange slices, a strawberry, a banana, and a pumpkin, and it would say make a smiley face with this. Or you'd be told to draw this kind of thing. What this tests here is how you integrate your spatial recognition and your visual perception skills. What do you think you're looking for when you watch somebody draw this?
Is it like how big or small they would draw it on the pumpkin?
So I mean, the pumpkin's part of the drawing. So you have to actually draw the pumpkin as well. So I would tell you, Gabby, draw me a smiley face using a pumpkin, 2 orange slices, a strawberry, and a banana. And you would have, and it doesn't matter if you draw them correctly or not, but what matters is this relative sizes to them. Where do you think you'd see problems here? So what do you think is going to be screwed up in this picture if something's screwed up?
Like the eyes aren't in the right place, or
Yeah, maybe.
straw. I don't really know.
Think of the sizes of these things. When you have the particular sizes correct, it shows that you're able to do a recall and an appropriate recall of how big something is relative to what the actual intended target is. If you are doing this, and let's say you draw it, you know, granted, here's my awesome pumpkin, that really doesn't matter. The big thing with the pumpkin is it's big enough to, you know, house everything else. But let's say my orange slices look like this, and my strawberry looks like that. What is that telling me? So that's the strawberry, that's the orange.
Like, I don't really know the right answer, I don't think, but if you're looking, like the way you draw it, is it kind of like the way you see people? Like see other, sorry, I don't really know what I'm trying to say, but like if somebody's drawing like the nose bigger than the eyes, like
You're on the right track there.
they're not seeing it in like the right proportions.
Yeah, exactly. So what that's telling you there is that you're not able to accurately take an actual object size and give me correct proportions of it. This is telling me that my visual spatial integration is flawed in some way. And this is very common that you would see a child do something like that, where usually the banana will be longer, the oranges will be smaller, and the strawberry will be bigger. And that's just saying they don't have a mastery of understanding visual spatial perceptions. What would be truly bothersome or worrisome here is if they made the drawing and say did something like this, where the banana is here, the strawberry is here trying to be the eyes, and then the oranges are trying to be the mouth. That would be something that would be very worrisome to see, especially in older adults. So there is a test, and gosh, I can't think of the name of it. I knew I was going to talk about this, but you're given essentially a bunch of, I don't want, not an erector set, but it's essentially like a building set where, you know, you have like, say, like a wheel that has all those connectors in it kind of thing. And you have like things that you can connect to. Do you know what I'm talking about?
No.
Okay. But it's like a wood wheel, and you can stick like pegs in it, and you can make like, you know, a car or something. Um, this is going to bother me now. Um, this is really going to bother me because I can't find it. Oh, like something like this. This is what I'm talking about. So you would be given like all of these different pieces here, and you would just be given the instruction to build something. And then you have to say what it is you built. If you aren't able to build something that's realistic, like it doesn't have to be something perfect, like you don't have to be like, you know, great at building blocks, but if it's something that's just like clearly a hodgepodge of things just thrown together, and you don't have an appropriate name for it, like, oh, this is called a thing or a thingy, you know, it's a thing, that is a very concerning sign of like cognitive impairment, which you definitely would usually see in older adults. All right, sorry I took so much time to figure that out. This here, have you seen artwork in which larger objects or pictures are composed of smaller ones unrelated to the larger picture? This is not a collage, but it's where you would take tons and tons of little pictures and you make them into like one bigger picture. I'm sure you've seen things like that before. Children won't be able to perceive each of the individual pictures. They'll only be able to perceive the greater, larger picture. Children also perceive size much differently. Think about, you know, Mason is about, oh, I'd say pushing 35, 36 inches right now. I'm 6'3", so I'm 75 inches. What do you think I look like to him?
Like gigantic because he's so small
Yeah,
and you're quite large.
probably. Probably. Um, Same thing you would see in horses. Horses see us as giants, but that's because they have such large eyes that they see much bigger. So even though a horse is clearly bigger than you, it actually views you as roughly, I believe it's like 3 to 4 times larger than what you are. So that's a very, that'd be kind of unfortunate if everything you saw was bigger than what it actually was. Imagine touching something, like you go to grab like a baseball and it looks like a basketball, but then when you go to grab it, it fits in the palm of your hand, you know? Imagine how that would really screw with your perception of the world if that's how you saw. So back to Mason. He sees me as a giant, okay? Well, when he's, looking at, let's say, drawing something, if he doesn't have something to say trace, and it's essentially he's given a task of draw this, what do you think his size perception is on drawings of different objects?
They're huge.
Yeah, he draws them much bigger than what they are because his perceptions right now are that everything is so much bigger than what it actually is. So when kids first start drawing, that they're going to have this gigantism kind of approach to it because that's how they are going to really perceive most everything. All right. The one big thing here with the bits of motion, this goes into catching and with tracking and scanning. When you are tracking and scanning, you know that you can see something moving and you're able to follow that something moving. This is why you can catch a ball or you can kick a ball that is kicked to you. You can track and scan that ball coming to you. Infants can perceive motion. They'd be able to see, Mason can see that ball coming to him, but he can't judge velocity really well. He can judge direction, but velocity not so much. If I go and I toss him a ball, you'll watch him track it with his eyes. He will see it with his eyes, and then it hits him in the chest. And then he puts his arms out when the ball's already on the ground. It's because he can't track that velocity, so his reaction to something like that is delayed. And it's perfectly normal. At least I'm telling myself that. It's perfectly normal for that to happen. As you get more visual acuity and then you get more experience or practice with seeing things move, then you're going to improve on those tracking and scanning skills. Tracking and scanning is one of the last things to develop. So you're going to develop fine motor skills before you can perfect tracking and scanning. And just look at any 5 or 6-year-old playing catch, and that will answer everything you need to know about that. All right, kinesthesis. So the term you may hear is tactile kinesthetic. This is touch. So when you have a kinesthetic development, you're talking about your touch sensation. Proprioceptors or proprioception is how your body tells where you are in space. This is where you get into that whole development of your motor skills, and this is truly how you get what is known as those sensory motor skills. You're combining the touch sensation mixed with fine and gross motor skills gives you your sensory perception. you are not going to be able to differentiate really, say, a single touch to any given finger or any part of your hand when you're initially learning these motor skill developments. You're going to grab everything. You're going to full fist everything kind of thing. You start learning or gaining, I should say, more of this visual perception awareness, the more that you're able to get something touching each individual part of your hand or your fingers, because you actually start doing much more motor integration, motor nerve integration there. So the same way that you get stronger by lifting weights, because initially you get more motor nerves or motor units that are going to activate more of your muscle, is the same way you're going to develop your gross and fine motor skills, because you're getting more muscle spindle activation there. Loss of sensitivity with aging is usually not something that happens by itself. As you age, your body's going to break down. Your eyesight's going to get worse. Your hearing is going to get worse. Your sense of taste is going to get worse. Your touch sensitivity really shouldn't change. Everyone is going to get old and frail. Your body's going to break down as you age. That's just going to happen. But your touch is kind of immune to that, unless you have something else going on. If you lose touch, it means you're losing nerve integration. The most common cause of this is what's known as peripheral neuropathy. Peripheral means your appendages or your periphery, so that's your hands and your feet. Neuro refers to your nerves. Opathy refers to disease, or pathy, I should say, refers to disease. So this would be disease of your peripheral nerves. This happens a lot with people who have diabetes, especially type 2 diabetes. It can also happen on its own, but if you have peripheral neuropathy, you lose sensation in your feet and your hands. That's not normal. If that were to happen, that, like I said, suggests something else is going on. If you become forgetful, you're getting old. That happens. That's just part of life. If you can't feel something with your fingers anymore, that worries me, because that says something else is going wrong. Every other sense you have declines with age. The only one that doesn't is touch. So if touch starts declining, something else is going wrong. All right, and I want to kind of finish up here with audition, I should say. This is just how you hear. So think audio. Initially, all right, so when you talk about how someone hears and talks, like, I know for a fact that I tend to somewhat talk loud at inappropriate times. I try to speak louder on some of these recordings because I know the microphone is less sensitive. That may not come off well for you when you're hearing this live, but during the recording itself, it helps for the actual playback to be heard. If someone speaks very loud, just without any cueing or any other change in the environment, what does that tell you?
That they can't hear themselves talking.
Usually, yeah. And this isn't something that would happen with somebody that's, like, say, completely deaf, or someone that became deaf early in life. It would be somebody that loses hearing as they age. Because as you lose hearing, like Gabby was saying, you lose that ability to tell or get that feedback for how loud you're speaking. Now, I have headphones in or earphones in. What do you think that does to my hearing perception of myself?
It like blocks it because I know when I have my headphones in, I try not to talk to anybody because I don't want to speak too loudly,
Yeah.
especially.
Have you ever there? I mean, I know there's definitely like commercials and cartoons or even just shows where someone has headphones on and someone's talking to them and that person with headphones is like screaming at them, right? Because they're listening to something that's loud and they can't tell how loud their vocal inflection is. If you lose or if you start seeing a decline in hearing, you're going to start seeing an incline or an increase in the decibels at which you speak. Now, decibels refers to loudness. Frequency refers to tone. So if I have frequency, well, I shouldn't say tone, but it refers to pitch. So low frequency is something that's very, very deep, like a bass sounding something or other. Whereas, God, I really should bring Mason in here just to have him scream for you. But high frequency is going to be your extremely high pitched sounds. It is very well known that smaller children or even younger children can hear at a much, much higher frequency than adults. By the time you're about 15 to 18, you've lost that upper register of perception. So that's why, like, if you ever were to blow a dog whistle is typically silent to humans, but you blow that in any vicinity of a dog, and what are they going to do?
They're gonna like stop and look. It's gonna catch their attention.
Yes, because they can hear it. They can hear that very high frequency. Infants can not hear low frequency well. Once about like that, this 3-month-ish, they can start hearing that well. But if I were to like blast the bass on a newborn, they're really not going to hear it. The same way that you all are not going to hear an ultra high frequency sound. I could blast a high frequency sound as loud as I could. You're not going to hear it because your brain cannot actually take in that sound and understand it. You can't process that. So when children are speaking, or when they first learn to speak, it is loud because they are lacking that true pitch range or frequency range to where they'd be able to fully be able to hear and understand themselves. What's really important with children is that they hear the same voices over and over and over again. The more you speak to an infant, especially like your own child, the more that they are going to be able to recognize and kind of become more used to you before they may be able to even, have full appreciation of the tactile kinesthetic side of things. This is also true, you may hear with, say, like a lot of different animals, um, like penguins, for example. When penguins are in their, breeding grounds, whatever, and, there's millions of them all over, apparently a single penguin can hear what their child or what their partner sounds like the same way you would be able to hear me calling out to you. So like you would know, say for example, like Gabby, you may not know that it's me talking to you, but if I yelled out Gabby, you would be able to hear and understand that's my name coming from this direction, and you would respond to it. The more that I talk to you all, the more it's going to be easy for you to pick out my voice even without seeing me talk to you. It's like if you hear something on the radio, you hear someone's voice on the radio, how do you know who sings something if it's not told to you? You recognize their voice. So eventually you know that, oh, I hear this lyric, I know it's this person or this band singing that. That kind of makes sense?
Yes.
We obviously lose our hearing with age. The number one reason you're losing your hearing with age is due to environmental noise. This is the number one reason here. Inside your ear, inside your inner ear, like middle ear, you have little hairs that are growing really, it's not in your ear canal, it's like deeper within the actual bones of your middle ear. And those allow you to actually perceive sound. When you hear ringing in your ear, it's from those little hairs becoming irritated. And so they cause that ringing to happen. If you have tinnitus, or the less, I hate when people pronounce it tinnitus. I think that's stupid and wrong. But if you have tinnitus, you have ringing in your ear. It's because you are having those hairs become ultra sensitive or dying. Once they all die out, they don't grow back. So, once you go bald, you don't grow your hair back kind of thing. Well, once those hairs in your inner ear die out, you lose your hearing. All right, talked about locations. Yeah, so that's about everything I wanted to cover here. The big thing to kind of remember is how we integrate both audio-visual, audio-spatial, and audio kinesthetic with visual kinesthetic and with this spatial temporal. So pretty much you have these three main senses that are governing most all of how we develop. You have your tactile kinesthetic, or your touch sense. You have your auditory sense, or hearing, and you have your visual sense, or your visual acuity. If you didn't have the sense of smell or the sense of taste, those two do go together. So if you lose your sense of smell, you will lose your sense of taste. But if you lose those two, it's going to do nothing to actually change how your development is. Maybe you need to be told it's something spicy because you can't taste it, so you don't get the same reaction. I don't know. In terms of motor skill development, your taste and your smell aren't worth nothing. No one cares at all about them. So the big three you should remember: vision, hearing, and touch. You can really summarize this entire chapter with knowing how your body develops those three senses and how it integrates them together. If you can answer those two questions, life is super easy for you. But that's really, in a nutshell, that's kind of what all motor development comes down to, is how you integrate audio to vision, audio to touch, and vision to touch. If you're able to explain those three things, you pretty much know everything you need to know about motor development. All right, so that is everything new I had for you there. What kind of questions do you all have for me right now?
I had a question back on like the perception and seeing and our like the motor skills. I was wondering like if you have a kid that's not developing fine motor skills, but like their gross motor skills are like decent, would that be an indicator that like maybe their eyesight's bad because like you said, like they can't like tell individual pieces, they just all see as one, or
It could be, yeah. The way you would want to kind of first confirm that is, like I told you, with doing or introducing contrasting colors. If they're not able to differentiate contrasting colors in terms of their fine motor skills, then usually that's a sign that yeah, there may be some vision issues with that. Um, you usually don't get too worried about fine motor skills in terms of like visual perception until you get around age 2+. So when you're in that 24 to 30 month like age range and you still haven't developed even, necessarily a start of fine motor skills, that's when it's time to start being a little worried.
okay, I was just wondering because you always see like maybe the videos or something of the little kids with their like glasses on, and I always wondered like how can they tell if like a kid really can't see, at such a young age.
Yeah, it's difficult. When something like that happens, you usually have something else going wrong. But I wouldn't be able to tell you exactly how, like, say, it's determined, what kind of visual deficit a child would have. I think more of like an optician or, uh, something along those lines, like an eye doctor would be able to do that. Um, but I would be able to tell you they probably do have a vision issue based on that lack of connection or lack of development of fine motor skills. Either that, or they have some sort of like neurological or other or some other developmental disorder. Either way, something's wrong if the fine motor skills aren't being developed at an appropriate time.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. All right, so if you guys don't have anything else, that's everything I have for you here today. I will post in the announcements your test that you'll be doing for Wednesday. So make sure you're ready to present that on Wednesday, and then we will move on from there. So as always, I will stick around till you all leave, but if not, I will see you all on Wednesday.